On today's show, I'll be joined by Glen Willis of ATL and 29 for our player capsule series. And before that, some optimism on Trae Young. In fact, it comes from Trae Young. We'll get into all that and more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1991 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Sunday evening here in early to mid-June. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to Locked On Hawks anywhere you find your podcast. That includes Apple, Spotify, Overcast on the audio side. Plus, we are on YouTube, so please like this video as you're watching it. And, of course, be sure to tell your friends and colleagues about this podcast. In a moment, I'll be joined by Glen Willis of ATL and 29 to continue our player capsule series with a deep dive into the pending free agent, Garrison Matthews. But first, I got a few questions about a topic, and I also found myself nodding along with some interest in this as well. So I wanted to open the podcast with this. There's some quotes from Trae Young that he gave at a Q&A, at a dinner actually, in his home state of Oklahoma prior to game one of the finals just a few days ago. I think it was on Wednesday. And if you did not know this, for whatever chance, Trae played at Oklahoma in college, but he's also from there. So he grew up a massive Thunder fan, as you might imagine, for a player of his age with the Thunder coming into town. He's the first and only major pro sports team in that city. And he still has a house there, spends time there, all that stuff. So obviously ties to Oklahoma. But that's the backdrop of this. There was a write-up from Marc Spears of Andscape, longtime NBA reporter Marc Spears, to lay out the Q&A and the details of it. I recommend listening, reading the entire thing when it comes to the way that Trae was talking. But for me, I believe the takeaway from it, from a Hawks standpoint, was his optimism and his tone about the Hawks, generally speaking. So, again, read the whole thing, but the Hawks-related stuff is the following. First, Trae was asked about his legacy in Atlanta. He said he lets other people talk about that, but he also said, and I quote, "I love being in Atlanta," end quote. And also, quote, that's my second home, end quote. In the same answer, he also said, this is kind of the money quote, quote, "I have a feeling, hopefully, we're playing the Thunder next year, and I'm not having this dinner. Y'all will be watching me in the NBA Finals here in OKC," end quote. Then, in another question, he was asked for the reasons to be excited about the Hawks and their future. He referenced Ricochet, the number one pick from last year. He also said, quote, "We have a lot of young, really good players," end quote. He also said, quote, "We have a great coach," end quote. And then finally, he said, quote, "We have a lot of stuff that is promising, and we have a big season ahead for sure," end quote. Now, on one hand, you could say this is kind of normal stuff for a star player to say. And that's probably fair to point out, honestly. But at times in the past, I've covered Trae his entire career, dating back to the day he was drafted by the Hawks. Well, I guess traded for by the Hawks that night. And he's not always one to give this kind of glowing stuff about the Hawks. Like, even in the last couple of years, he's kind of like held back from going full on, Hawks for life kind of stuff. Anyway, for me, there wasn't really much holding back here. And obviously, you could poke fun a little bit about him talking about playing in the finals next year. Is that likely to happen? I would say no, to be honest. But you like to hear that from your star player if you're a Hawks fan, I would imagine. And for me, it's another data point in him being bought in. And if you missed it at the end of last week, I talked to Andrew Kelly on the show in two-part fashion. One of those discussions was about kind of the team-building aspects of the Hawks. We discussed Trae on that show and kind of the potential of him signing an extension, whether it might be below market value, full max, all those things. But part of that was like, I think Trae is bought in, from what I understand, that he was this year. He likes Quinn, as he said here. Trae does not have to say that we have a great coach, and he did. So that's probably a good sign for Quinn, all those things. So overall, I think that Trae will be in Atlanta. How long-term, we'll see. But I still think, as I've kind of reported on earlier this summer on the podcast, I think he'll be on the team. Extension talks will be interesting for him. But I found this notable, and then I got a few questions about it. So I want to at least address that at the top of the show. And from this point forward, we will turn it over to myself and Glen Willis. Again, if you missed any of this in the past, we have this annual player capsule series that Glen and I do together. The first installment was actually about Larry Nance Jr. a couple weeks ago. And this one's about Garrison Matthews. Kind of a shorter podcast discussion on only Garrison because, for obvious reasons, he's not a star player. But he is an interesting player. And we like to do the entire roster of full roster guys, plus Garrison's a free agent, intriguing, all that stuff. So anyway, that's all I have on this first segment. We'll dive in right now to myself and Glenn talking about Garrison Matthews. I'm joined once again by my pal Glen Willis, back for another rousing player capsule in the summertime. Glenn, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good and look forward to digging into a couple players here.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Garrison on this episode. Garrison Matthews, pending unrestricted free agent. Obviously, has been around the team for a while. And look, if you're new to this, we try to be comprehensive. I think infamously, Glenn and I managed to talk about Garrison for like 45 minutes last year. That's not going to happen. I'm going to throw my body in front of that this year. It will not be that long. It's not going to be a two-parter. It's going to be a one-parter on Garrison Matthews this year. I pledge that to everybody on the show right now at the top. But interesting player, and we're trying to do the free agents early because they might leave, and Garrison might not be on the Hawks anymore after this summer. But he just spent 2.5 years with the Hawks, his sixth season overall. Obviously, not like a heralded prospect coming out of college, and I know you have that relationship with Garrison. We'll probably mention this at some point here. He'll be 29 in October, and I guess broadly speaking, Glenn, what did you make of the Garrison Matthews experience in his second full year with the Hawks?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of fair to start with saying that he had some stretches where he played, he had some stretches where he didn't play for a long time, and that's difficult for any player. I feel like, I don't know, is it true or not? It's even harder for guys that kind of make their living through shooting the basketball from a rhythm standpoint. But as guys become more veteran, I think they learn how to navigate that maybe. And certainly they need all the shooting they could get on the floor at times, especially when they were playing from behind this year. Right. And that's really what it comes down to is the shooting. The other qualities that I like about him, and I will talk about the defense and stuff in a bit, but just plays hard, plays a lot of effort, tries to make the right plays. I think he's a better athlete than people realize he is. I think that shows up more on offense, really, in terms of he's really able to kind of get into his shot from a lot of different kind of angles and starting points and all that sort of stuff. And it shows up there. It doesn't always show up as much on defense, but I thought he was a guy that when they called on him, he was ready to go, and he went out and kind of gave them what they could, which is for a guy who's your 10th guy or whatever he was, depending on how many people were injured at whatever point in the season. I thought he gave them, a reasonable kind of output and amount of production for kind of where his slot was in the rotation.
For sure. And I think, Garrison is very reliable. Something I have in my notes, like he's had one injury listing even in his entire time with the Hawks. He sprained an ankle in January 24. So that's a year and a half ago. Missed I think maybe a game or two, and that was it. He's very durable, good athlete. And look, he's a specialist. We'll get into that. We kind of know what he is on some level, but he is a valuable guy to have on your roster. It's okay to not play him sometimes, which the Hawks did. They also, I think Garrett is interesting to me in looking back into this to prepare for this. I knew this, but a lot of times in garbage time, they didn't put Garrison and Larry Nance back in. We already did Larry's capsule. They treated Garrison like an old vet. Like he's not old, but he was not like, hey, we're going to make you play garbage time minutes. It was like he's either in the rotation or he doesn't play. And that's how he ended up playing less games overall because of that. But he definitely a guy that the organization has valued, but also he's limited, as we'll get into. Certainly, everyone understands that, and he's not someone I know he started games in Washington and Houston before, but you don't want him starting games. You want him to be he's the role player and about as much of a specialist as you kind of get in the modern NBA. To be honest, we'll get into some of those numbers, but I guess we'll start with the offense. Obviously, that's his calling card. Defensively, he does compete, but offensively, the shooting is the shooting and is the shooting. He quote unquote only shot 39% from three this year, which sounds funny to say out loud. It's a really good number on big volume, but it was 44% the previous year. He takes a ton of them, more than 12 per 100 possessions this year. That's an uber elite number. He can create them through what you said before. Like he flies off screens. He doesn't have to be he's not just a standstill catch and shoot guy. Yes, he's catch and shoot, but he's flying off screens and taking he takes some difficult shots. I mean, you watch some of these back, and it's like most guys would not attempt some shots that Garrison takes and should take because he's that level of shooter. So how do you kind of put that in context? Like, how valuable is his shooting? Because clearly that's the reason why he's in the league, if we're just being 100% honest, is because he's able to shoot the way he does. But what kind of value does that have independent? And obviously on this Hawks team, like you already said, they just needed somebody like him the last couple of years, and he's been that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I always want to kind of contextualize like how useful a guy and his qualities can be depending on the opponent, right? You're going up against a bottom 10 defense, a guy who could just kind of stand in the quarter, catch and shoot, probably fine. Like bottom 10 defense is overcommitting to the strong side of the floor, having a hard time rotating back. But when you go up against a team like Boston that top locks pin downs constantly, Orlando also top locks pin downs. OKC does it. Indy does it. New York does it. The Knicks do it. And so when you need someone who can be physical and kind of work through that top lock, reset a second screen with the pin down screener, and just all of that attention to detail is what really kind of shows up when you're facing a top 10 defense, which is very, very different. If you go back to, a good 10 years ago now, maybe a little bit more, like Korver, all of the kind of martial arts he used to kind of get himself set up for the pin down, coming from whether it was Millsap or Horford, whoever it might have been, or Perro, so shouts to Perro. But that stuff, I mean, isn't always on screen, or isn't always kind of centered on, if you're watching on TV, centered on the screen. But the ability to kind of set that up, and when the top lock kind of blows up the first screen, being able to kind of get into a second opportunity to get that screen and move up the floor, that's a skill. That's a really, really valuable skill. That's something that Garrison does have. And like I said, it makes a difference against teams who really are committed to attention to detail and basically trying to not let you run the basic stuff you're trying to run. So I think that's a quality that is sometimes underappreciated with a guy like him.
Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. We've done this in the past, I'm sure, but at times I've looked in my bank account, to be honest with you, and wonder where all of my money happened to go between dining out and online shopping and entertainment. It's easy to lose track sometimes, and that's where Monarch Money comes in. Monarch Money is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app, it's instead a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. You can stop just managing your money and start building wealth instead. I started using Monarch. I also have money I'm spending on food. That's just one example, but now I budget smarter and save more money in the process. Instead of juggling multiple apps at the same time, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals all in one place. You also, if you want to, manage money in conjunction with your partner. If you want to do that, it's smoother than ever. You can track personal accounts and shared accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without any of the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And when I call him a specialist, I try not to use that term too much because, like, some guys that are thought of that way are actually not like pure specialists. Garrison's pretty far on that spectrum. Like I looked this up today. He has attempted 85% of his career shots from three-point range, which isn't, that's not the highest mark in the league, but it's up there for sure. This year, he only took 12 shots at the rim the entire season. And like, that's mostly like, you would think either putbacks or uncontested, a back cut that somebody falls asleep on or whatever. For the most part, he's flying around the perimeter, and that's just what he is. And I noticed this as well, looking back. It really was stark how he kind of stopped playing when they got LeVert, Mann, and Niang at the deadline. That was kind of the line it was the deadline. Like, and you would think that doesn't make sense because they had so many injuries late in the season, right? But they were front court injuries, and that doesn't put Garrison on the court. And basically, once you had Niang as a floor spacer, you had LeVert and Mann now on the roster as wing size guys, and then Vit Krejci was back and healthy for a large portion of that run. Garrison's behind all those guys, and that led to him basically just not playing for like a large swath. Like, he didn't play. I looked this up today. He didn't play from February 7th until March 3rd, which is like a full month. And then he played one game, and then he didn't play again for like 2 weeks. And it's like, it's a tough existence. Like, he's a pro's pro. That's something that the Hawks will always say about Garrison is he stays ready. I'm not sure if you remember this, but Quinn will go out of his way a few times per season, it feels like, to be like almost unprompted, like shout Garrison out for being ready, basically. Because it's a hard, like, and Quinn understands the interpersonal dynamics of that. Because Garrison's kind of an interesting character, like, not in a bad way, but he's kind of a gruff guy. He's not a big talker, but I think that we only see that. But guys like Garrison, like he's a valuable kind of vet like guy to have. And it is hard to stay ready when you don't play in games. And that seems, I know it's like very obvious, but it's also worth noting, especially like you said before, him being asked to do basically one thing when he comes in. It's like, and you can't ease into it. It's like you have to be flying around the moment you get on the court, or he can't be out there. So, and I'm sure he knows that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not going to be surprised if he makes another $20 million his career, just kind of bouncing from team to team that needs shooting depth, right? Could be like, $4 million here, $5 million, whatever it might be, half the mid level, whatever it turns out to be. But guys who have that skill typically find rosters that need depth, in that shooting category. And so whether that's with the Hawks again next year or whether that's somewhere else, just you have to appreciate, like Quinn always says, just the fact that he, even when we didn't play for a long time, he was encouraging his teammates and, was, supportive and engaged from the bench, and those things and those qualities are always appreciated by teammates as well.
One more shooting stat that I grabbed. It was a strange season of splits for Garrison. He's not this player overall. I'm teeing that up because he shot 59% on corner threes per clean in the glass. That's a ridiculous number, obviously. Like, that's a three-pointer. Doesn't matter if you are by yourself in an empty gym. 60% basically on a three-pointer is ridiculous. But he only shot 29% on above the break threes. And that's a little bit strange for him too. Like, he's better than that. So that's just a one season, I think, kind of blip of randomness, if I had to guess. I do want to ask you one non-shooting thing about his offense. He had a career high assist rate this season. Now, career high for him is not a huge bar to clear. He's not a huge passer, but it did tick up, and so did his turnover rate. And I wonder, knowing that you watch as much as I do, you think it's scheme-based? You think they just had him kind of have to make more decisions with the ball than he had in the past? Like, I wonder what jumped out to you as far as, like, what would account for him kind of, having more events, quote unquote, like more turnovers, more assists, like just having the ball more often, I guess.
I think a lot of that does come from scheme, right? They lean way more into motion this year, moving the ball. Quinn preaches the 0.5, and I don't know that Garrison always hit exactly that number, but he tried his hardest to get there. I would say he's an average ball handler and average, maybe a slightly below average passer for a guard. But I felt like he was trying to do the things they were asking their guards to do, which is on the catch, read, drive, shoot, or pass, like within half of a second. And for him, like, I think he is shooting all through his DNA, right? And I think his first instinct is going to be, can I get a shot up, right? And his volume numbers kind of suggest that. But I think there were times across the season where he saw there was a driving lane in front of him that was wide open, and he could, I can get a paint touch and kick it, and that was something I think that he was leaning into more so, even though I think, this is just me guessing, he probably had to kind of work against some of his instincts as just a kind of a guy just to pull from the three-point line all the time. And so I thought he looked like a guy who was trying to kind of lean into what they were asking everyone to do on offense, which was to make that read, make the right read, make the right play. And I thought he did a nice job trying to acclimate to, those sets of kind of priorities, things they were prioritizing on offense this year.
That tracks with what I saw too. And again, like, they want him, especially, this is probably overshared at this point, but Quinn and the staff encourage basically anyone that's not Clint Capella to take threes when they're open. Garrison doesn't have to be open. They want him to shoot basically when he's semi-open. Like, they want him hunting shots, and he definitely did that. And some of them are hard. I mean, that's the thing. To shoot this well on as difficult of a three-point shot night as he takes, he's not taking Steph Curry shots off the dribble, but he takes some of the harder catch and shoots you're going to ever see. And I think it shouldn't be ignored, like, how good of a shooter Garrison Matthews is. I think he is a top 5 percentile shooter in the league kind of guy. Like, I don't know how many players that are just flat out better shooters than Garrison Matthews. It's a small list.
Yeah, I think what plays into that above the break volumes more too is that I think the Bogey trade really kind of created a bit of a ripple effect, because before they traded Bogey, he got a most of the brush go screen action where he would screen middle, go to the 3-point break or to the corner. Quinn talks about clean corner, operations a lot in terms of how they keep that weak side corner clean. And I think, but once he was gone, and especially as they were kind of acclimating Levert and Niang into that action. That was they were kind of rolling him through that action some now and then too. That was new for him to actually be a guard ball screener, was something he hadn't really done much before. And so I thought they were trying to kind of open up some opportunity for him to do some of the stuff that they used to almost exclusively on bogey for. I think that new stuff was an adjustment for him. To not just be in the corner waiting for the ball to rotate to him, but actually get involved as a screener and into primary guard screens and things like that. That seems like it's something that would take some time to adjust to me.
Today's is brought to you by DoorDash. And NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. And DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for DashPass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, and you score. If your player has 50 points or more in a playoff game, if you're a DashPass member, you can score a free three-piece crispy sandwich combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and the combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. If you've ever looked at food delivery in the past, thought there just has to be a better way to do it, you check out DoorDash instead. With DashPass, if $0 delivery fees and exclusive purchase like this one, just imagine how much you could save over a full basketball season. And here's the play. Sign up for DashPass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. And when any player has 50 points or more in a playoff game, if you're a member at DashPass, you can grab a free three-piece crispy tenders combo of Wingstop the very next day with a $20 plus order and code Wingstop50. That's DashPass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. I want to get to his defense. We all understand he's not a great defender. So that's the first thing we'll say out loud. And, he's not as small as you might think. I think at one point they were listing him at 6'6". I can tell you that's not true. He's not 6'6". Standing next to him, he's probably yeah. I mean, he's probably 6'4". I mean, if you want to give him 6'5", sure. He's probably 6'4". And he's got some size to him. I think he's 200 plus pounds. Like he's not a skinny guy. Like he's well built. He's strong. And he is aggressive. He plays hard. He isn't a great rebounder, which just kind of goes with the territory again, like kind of not be the biggest guy in the world. I noticed looking at the stats, his steal and block rates were up to like career high levels this year. Now, again, fairly modest levels, but maybe some more aggressiveness. His calling card is probably his drawn charges defensively of all the things that he's known for. If he is known for anything, it's probably that. He's always been really high, especially on a per minute basis. Like he draws a lot of charges and he'll throw his body around, which I appreciate. I think that maybe comes from not being highly recruited, not being a high draft pick, not being drafted, basically, and coming in and kind of knowing what you have to do to stay on the court. But Garrison's limited. I wonder what you think of him as like, even in a vacuum, because I think playing him next to Trae has like always been tough defensively, for example. But in a vacuum, let's say like compared to like NBA shooting guards, like where does he kind of stack up as far as like overall quality there?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of starts with you can somewhat overcome some limitations by just playing hard, right? Yeah. And just playing a lot of effort. That's not going to overcome all your limitations, but he's early to the front of the restricted circle when he's low man. He knows he has to get there early, or he has no shot at all to impact the play, and so he makes that happen. It's kind of funny. His screen navigation is pretty rough, but he has learned to. Oh, if I'm not going to get over the screen, I'm going to run into the screener and fall down and hope they call a foul, right? And depending upon when this is posted, like Shea did that twice in game 1 of the finals against the Pacers, where he just ran to the screener, fell over, and the officials fell for it. So I get maybe a little hard for me to criticize Shea if I'm, kind of giving Garrison props for learning how to. I can't get around the screen. I'm going to, make something happen here. So that's there as well. On the ball, keeping, plus ball handlers and creators in front of him, pretty tough task to ask of him. If you're trying to play a switchable lineup, he makes it harder to do that. And so those limitations kind of come. But, the trade-off that you get is if you're down 12, 3 minutes to go in the third quarter, whatever, you get to 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, you just have to spam your lineup with shooting. That's what you get. And on the defensive floor, at least he's going to fly around. It may not always be constructive flying around, but he's going to fly around and kind of give you effort and things like that. And as he's gone year to year to year, he's learned to develop a little bit more artistry, maybe I'll say, in terms of how he handles screen navigation and things like that.
Yeah, he's a pretty high foul player for this archetype. I think it's like 4.9 per 100 possessions in his career. That's pretty high for a shooting guard who is not like an on-ball guy most of the time. Like it's mostly like you're trying to hide him a little bit. I think the Hawks have shown that they don't want him to be in the primary action if they can help it. You can't always help it. That's the thing. Like you can only hide so many guys. If he's playing with Trae, you're probably trying to hide Trae first, and then Garrison after that. So there's give and take there. But it struck me that he is, it probably speaks to like his hard-nosed nature that he is that kind of high foul player, despite not really being in a lot of actions, a lot of maybe flops and drawn charges that are blocks and all those things that you might see.
Yeah, and maybe learn from Bogey, who's will just take a foul.
Oh yeah, I mean,
take a foul.
as soon as Bogey infamously, even when they changed the take foul rule, would just keep taking them because he just can't stop himself. He's just whatever it is. That's his default reflex forever.
I know. It's like, this isn't Europe.
He can't not do it. In an effort to get out of here on Garrison, he is a free agent this summer. He's unrestricted. I think if I had to guess, he'll have a job in the league. I think he's a good player. He'll have a job in the league. It's probably going to be the minimum, I would guess. I can't imagine it, but if I, given them where all the aprons and all this, I think that he's going to be a minimum player. The Hawks are kind of in the market for, at least I think that they could. I'm not saying they're going to do this, but they could invest in kind of a bomber. And what I mean by that is, like, if they think the offense would kind of explode with a certain archetype of player who's probably better than Garrison, but like a 3-point bomber guy that they don't really have on the team. I know Niang shoots a lot of threes and is good at shooting them, but he's not like flying around screens and bombing off screens, Garrison isn't that. But if they don't get that guy, would it surprise me if they sign Garrison to the minimum again? No, not at all. I don't know if they're going to. Like, I've kind of waited already, so I'll say here, I think if I'm guessing right now, Karis LeVert will be back. Larry Nance is close, but maybe back. Clint won't be back. I really don't have any idea on Garrison. I like to share that on the podcast, but when I don't have a clue, I have no clue whether he wants to be back, whether the team wants him back. I wish I did know, and I don't. But I mean, there's no bad blood, so it's like, sure, if he's gonna have a job, come on back, Garrison. But I just don't know what the future holds for him as far as Atlanta is concerned.
Yeah, it seems to me that guys like him who are playing kind of one-year contract for this, the way it seems it's going to go is that his agent's going to try to find a place that will commit some amount of playing time to him, because you have to play to build your market value. And so if the Hawks are like, yeah, it's going to be off and on across the season,
similar to this year. I mean, yeah, one thing I will on the player side, we always think, not always, but we tend to think about things on the team side, which it makes sense. If you're a fan of a team, you're thinking about the team, not the player. But on the player side and on the agent side, if he could get a situation somewhere else where he's like more firmly in the rotation, like as that like ninth guy, because he might be the 13th guy on the team in Atlanta. I'm not saying he will be, but that could be where he is. If they invest in, talk about rookie, they got 2 first-round picks. If they bring Karis back, you still got Veet and Terrence. Like, there's a lot of bodies. Even Bufkin, I think if he's on the team, I would project him to play more than Garrison, just in a vacuum. So it's a lot of bodies. So for me, it's basically, if Garrison has a job that's better as far as the role is concerned, I would expect him to take that. And that's honestly what he should do. he should go somewhere else if he needs to.
Yeah, you think about some of the poorer shooting teams, like Orlando could use a guy like him for sure. Just when they're playing from behind. Milwaukee ran out of shooters this year. Could use the guy who was their like 8th or 9th guy. He would probably have played a lot for Milwaukee if he were there this year. The way things kind of shook out there. And so there are teams that need shooting depth. And there might be a team that says, yeah, we're going to give you 12 minutes a game, from the beginning of the season, and we'll commit that to you. If that's the case, that's probably what Garrison's going to prioritize, is where you can go play enough to generate market value so you can hopefully, kind of build that up and not go somewhere and be completely buried. So that's what agents' jobs typically is about doing, is finding the right place to help their player generate grow their market value. And so from that vantage point, Hawks might be at a bit of a disadvantage if another team's willing to step in and say, let's get you in here and let you actually play.
Yeah, we're on the same page there, and I think the biggest thing for the player is just try to get in situations where you can play the next year and the next year and the next year. I don't think Garrison's going to suddenly get a 3-year contract from somebody. He's probably going to be a minimum guy this summer, maybe a 1+1 kind of thing, or team options or whatever it would be, but a low market. But I think he'll be in the league. I think he should be in the league. He's an NBA player. He's just not somebody that I would be jumping on as a good team. I don't think you want to enter the season with Garrison in your top 9 or 10 if you can help it. He's probably more of a 12th, 13th guy on a good team, which is fine. There's room for that player in the league, and the shooting. If you can shoot like the way he does, you will probably have the market for your services for a while, I would say.
Yes, sounds right.
All right, Glenn, that is all for the Garrison Matthews player capsule. I'm going to make you plug yourself every time we do one of these. So for people that have not heard this podcast before, or might be just huge Garrison Matthews fans that have found us on YouTube, where can they find your musings, Glenn?
Yeah, ATL29. You can find me on Twitter /X at Willis_Glenn. I used to forget what my handle is on Blue Sky, but you can find me. Just search for Glenn. It's different. And then you can find my Patreon. Linked in both bios on Blue Sky and Twitter /X. Working through a lot of draft profiles right now. Day job crushed me this week, so we're going to get 3 or 4 out this weekend. Trying to kind of focus more and more on guys that seem to be a potential fit for what the Hawks might prioritize as they draft, assuming they stay at 13 and 22.
Well, thank you as always for being here, Glenn. We definitely appreciate it. We'll have more player capsules as long as I can find the time alongside. It's a negotiation on our time schedules. We both have day jobs and things, but I appreciate you being here. As always, as for everybody else, please subscribe to the podcast. Stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.